I'm going to talk about generative AI here, but not in the way that you might think. There are already enough people spouting on about its numerous abilities and others talking about its threats and dangers, and hopefully people are paying attention to both sides. But one of the great promises of the Gen AI revolution, especially in the marketing of all these new apps that you never knew you needed, is that it would increase productivity. That's a wonderful idea, but it's not true. And this is something that people need to get used to. Technology may have changed, arguably for the better, but we humans have not. And that's going to take more than a planet's worth of computing power. And if we can't change, AI might be a zero-sum game. Or worse. Hello and welcome to Cool Time Life. I'm Steve Prentice. Each of our Cool Time Life podcasts focuses on a topic dealing with people, productivity, technology, and work life, and each offers ideas and facts you need to know about to thrive in today's busy world. An index of our podcasts is available at cooltimelife.com. To illustrate my point about the zero-sum game, let's first look at the concept called induced demand. When a city discovers it has a problem with traffic congestion, being too many cars and trucks on its highways, long traffic jams, and the chaos that comes when even a single lane of a multi-lane highway is blocked, well, someone eventually gets the bright idea to build another highway. This seems like a wonderful solution, one that is often eagerly lapped up by local politicians as a great way to spend money and reward cronies, and which will supposedly also be gratefully received by the tax-paying public, who will, of course, foot the bill. The problem is, adding new highways doesn't work. Because as soon as a new highway is built, a whole bunch more cars and trucks appear and immediately fill this new highway up too. So now you have another jammed highway. So where did all these other cars and trucks come from? Well, they, or more precisely their owners, learned about the new highway and decided to use it. It's a concept called induced demand, and it happens all the time. The presence of the new highway attracts more people. Some may have been using mass transit, some may have been traveling by alternate routes, including the already jammed highways, but now they are spilling onto the new system, and others dutifully follow. The only way to reduce highway congestion is to have fewer cars, not to build more highways. But that is not a politically popular idea, at least in North America. I live close to an expensive toll highway which runs east to west over the top of Toronto. It is often delightfully empty. Very few cars, almost no trucks, no slowdowns, not even any billboards or buildings, just a big, wide highway cutting mostly through farmers' fields. The positive side of this is you can pretty much expect a fast, uneventful ride, allowing you to arrive at your destination at the time you had hoped or maybe even earlier. The downside is you'll be out the best part of $100 for a return trip. I once had the opportunity of asking an executive from the company that managed this private highway why the tolls were so expensive, and why shouldn't it be made free to use like all the other highways in the area. His reply was quite straightforward. If you remove the tolls, this nice quiet highway would become immediately jammed with cars and trucks. They will just come. And his key point was, even if that were to happen, it would not and could not alleviate the congestion on the other highways. There will just be more of everything. More cars, more trucks, more highways, more congestion, more delays. Now, those who do the simple math will say, hey, if you take a sample figure like 1,000 cars divided by 2 highways, that means 500 cars on each, doesn't it? Well, yeah, that's good, but they are basing that calculation on an assumption that 1,000 is the top number, and that those humans who were put off by the congestion on the first highway won't be compelled to join the fray. But they will. Induced demand shows that where there were 1,000 cars, there will now be 2,000 cars or more, because humans are messy that way. So this brings me back to the promise of increased productivity through the use of AI. Without very careful and diligently applied rules of behavior, all this technology, for most end users anyway, has the potential of doing the exact same inflationary thing. Let me give you another example: email. Email has been around for pretty much 40 years now. But there was a time when email did not exist, and people relied on the postal service and inter-office mail to move information around. When electronic mail came onto the scene, it was not an innovation. There was nothing new in its execution. It was simply an improvement in speed. It was still based on the act of writing a letter and then sending it. Just like a new highway being built across a city, it was perceived as a faster and better way to do the same thing. Send letters back and forth, and it was part of what was even called the information superhighway. Thanks, Al Gore. Email was supposed to make things more productive by being super fast. But what happened? We just started sending more emails. They seem to cost nothing after all, and in theory we would be able to have a whole email conversation in far less time than it would have taken to have paper letters transported back and forth by the postal service. So, the emails multiplied, and with it came all the time required to compose them, edit them, respond to them, and to focus on them when they arrived in the middle of an already busy day. To this very day, I ask people in the seminars that I run to take stock of the average number of emails they deal with each day. The term deal with means composing new emails, reading emails in the inbox, and responding to emails. It also includes emails that have attachments or other tasks, like scheduling a meeting that have nothing to do with the work that is in front of you, which itself is now getting delayed by the processing of these emails. Some seminar attendees tell me they deal with 30 or 40 emails a day. Some say it's as high as 150. So when I next ask them to tell me the average time required for each email to be processed, even if they say it takes them 2 minutes per email, that adds up to between 1 hour and 6 hours a day spent just on email. This discovery shocks a lot of people, but they don't deny the numbers. It's the same thing with calories and liquid assets, in other words, cash. We simply don't want to or can't keep track of the realities of these very liquid concepts. So this problem comes from induced demand. Emails beget more emails the same way rabbits beget more rabbits, very quickly. The time-saving benefits of using email were very quickly absorbed by the ergonomic inflation of having more emails to deal with a resultant net gain in productivity of 0 or less. The irony is that paper letter that your grandparents had to write out was likely more efficient because it took time to think of the right things to say and less time overall to resolve the issue. Now, you might say using email is a rather dated example, having been around for 40 years or so, but that's precisely the point. We are still using it. And still losing millions of hours of productivity per day to it. In my courses, I teach people how to influence other people to send fewer emails, or to respect periods of time when you are focusing on your work and unable to respond. This is, without doubt, a challenging skill to master. The pressure of emails and the senders who send them make it very difficult to say no to people's expectations. So when collaborative technologies like Slack came along, there was again a promise of less time being spent on emails due to the smoother and less formal style that Slack and similar technologies offer. Unfortunately, people simply found themselves overwhelmed by too many chat messages and continued to struggle with the social pressure of turning their Slack channel to the Do Not Disturb session. Saying no is the hardest word in the English language to pronounce. This all comes down to a single, simple reality. If a new technology allows you to do something faster, maybe winning you back 2, 3, maybe 4 hours of productivity per day, that would be great, unless you fill those hours with the exact same activities. Not activities that advance a project's progress, but instead 10 more back-and-forth emails, more meetings, and other support activities whose existence is simply allowed by the fact that there appears to be more time in which to do them, but whose value does not justify that existence. This, by the way, is what Parkinson's law is all about. Work expands to fill the time, or the resources, available. So clearly, AI and generative AI are in their earliest moments, at least for public perception, and their main reasons for being have yet to be invented. Think about it. Almost all of our technological innovations throughout history have been applied to some task we already knew about. The very first telephone was devised to help people who were hard of hearing. The idea of using it as a distance communication tool was far too abstract. The first motion pictures were simply there to record vaudeville stage plays, and of course, web browsers were designed as simply a big old index of printed and digitized material. So right now we have a bunch of AI tools with cute names doing things that we used to do manually, like doing online research or editing videos, and in many cases they help us do these things slightly better. Lots of other people have already written about how helpful ChatGPT and its competitors can be, and this will only get better and more reliable as the technologies develop. But what is less easy to develop is human nature. It is our nature to slide back down the productivity curve. Video chat technologies like Zoom allow us to have meetings without incurring the time and expense to travel to them, but this has just led to more meetings, and not necessarily more efficient ones. Using ChatGPT to create the first draft of an article is cool, and it's especially fun to watch it do it, but then time is required to reread and rewrite that copy and possibly fact-check, grammar check, hallucination check, and further double-check that it's okay to send. Sure, some time is saved, especially in the initial creative process where writer's block is concerned, but the net time saved is not as huge as we all expect. Now, I am not knocking the technology here. I think it has great potential, but I am questioning the human capacity to roll with it and to truly become more efficient. Just like the crowded highway scenario, just because a car can go fast doesn't mean it will be able to, given speed limits, traffic lights, and congestion on highways and in parking lots. That is why, by the way, car commercials always show their models driving on empty city streets or along deserted coastal highways. That's the promise of an ideal life that most people would love to experience, but in reality will not, at least for 99.9% of the time that they own that vehicle. It seems so easy to write and then send a message via email, SMS, Slack, or WhatsApp, but do all these messages, along with correcting the typos that voice recognition simply just can't catch, is all that faster than a quick 5-minute phone call? Again, I'm not saying these technologies are bad. They are mostly very good, but the shininess of our toys tends to blind us to what true productivity is. Writing 10 messages where one conversation would suffice is not productivity. It's ergonomic inflation. Allowing back-to-back meetings to be piled up in your calendar by people or by an AI tool is not an improvement. It's just a freshly laid path to meeting hell, in which participants will remember even less of the meetings they were in than ever. Even if an AI assistant were to say, "Hey, slow down there, big fella, give yourself some time between these meetings to wrap things up and breathe a little," most people would overrule that in order to feel they were getting more done, or out of the fear of offending people by saying no to their next request. Ultimately, if the technology were able to help everyone get 5 days worth of work done in 4 days, thus allowing us the much vaunted 4-day work week, what would happen? Well, I think we would simply redefine the work of 5 days crammed into 4 as the new normal for 4 days. And then you would be pressured to return to the office, ostensibly to get even more done on the Friday. That's how we work. It's ergonomic inflation, both physically and mentally. The more we can do, the more we want to do, without seeing the true benefit or net results of those actions. Look at it from a high-level view. Is all of that work that we're doing true productivity, or is it just being busy? Busy work being done because more time has been freed up is even worse. It is just simply another example of induced demand. Furthermore, I would wager that even if the 4-day workweek were mandated as a law, many individuals would simply look for a second job to work on Fridays as a side hustle. Why? In order to make a little more money. So woe betide them when they discover that income tax laws will render that side hustle a zero-sum game. If all of this sounds like a real downer, it doesn't have to be. It's not a matter of saying these technologies are useless. It's just that when it comes to positive terms like improvement or productivity, we focus a little too much on the technologies and the work and not enough on human nature. Maybe it would be a good idea to redefine what productivity is, after all. Is it doing more of the same thing, like creating more widgets per hour? Or is it about doing a good thing in less time? Or does time have anything to do with it? If it takes 10 hours to make a widget, but 10 days to make a really superb widget, is that time worth it? Can you price accordingly? Will people buy quality accordingly? There are so many memorable expressions that bear out the notion of working too fast and too busily without thinking. Haste makes waste, for example. Many a product has been broken or damaged because someone moved too fast and broke it. Similarly, when days are planned too hastily and people agree to too many meetings without thinking, that's not a pathway to efficiency or productivity. In fact, it's quite the irony that one of the key selling points of current AI-based technologies is the capacity to summarize meetings quickly and efficiently. Sure, that sounds like a great idea, but just like the new highway being built around the city, will the ability to take minutes more effectively simply entice people to spend more time in meetings? Generative AI is seen as the savior of an overworked marketplace, but can it guarantee quality as it delivers such efficiencies? Redefining what quality is might mean figuring out how to have fewer meetings and how to send fewer emails. It would entail that managers learn how to manage less, to allow working people to get on with their job they were hired to do and to trust them to get it done. It might mean discovering just how much more important listening is as compared to telling, and how important trust and acknowledgement are in place of oversight and officiousness. Far too often, when a company finds itself in trouble, the first reaction is to cut costs. And where do they cut costs first? By cutting positions, chopping heads. There is an all too common sentiment amongst some in the higher ranks of an organization, as well as those who are paid to maximize its profits, that the people in an organization are merely costly appliances consuming the company's cash in the form of take-home pay, and that the company's value and revenue generation comes from somewhere else. These people who are let go, as the expression goes, could be or could have been some of the company's finest talents if productivity time had been given over to better upskilling and delegation. So too, the survivors, those who were not fired, at least not yet, can find themselves in a state of perpetual unease, waiting for the next swing of the axe, and downgrading their performance accordingly. That's called quiet quitting. And this is where my last analogy comes in. In times of excessive financial inflation, politicians and similarly short-sighted individuals will simply say, print more money, which is the worst thing to do. When it comes to technology, it can be very easy to say, use more technology. And sadly, the inflationary pressures render the same results. Perhaps the quality, efficiency, and productivity that people are looking for inside their shiny new AI tools have been with them all along, hidden within the minds of their employees, needing only the opportunity and support to grow into something powerfully efficient. I say all of this as someone who loves technology and who has made a career out of helping people understand it, but ultimately, productivity, once properly defined and understood, remains a human thing. If you have a comment about this podcast, join the conversation on LinkedIn. My ID there is Stephen Prentice, STEVEN or feel free to drop me a line through the contact form at cooltimelife.com, where you'll find a full listing of our evergreen Cool Time Life episodes. If you feel you are getting value from this series, please leave a review and tell just one more person about us or mention us on social media. And if you want, you can support us on Patreon. Contributions from our listeners allow me and my team to spend more time researching and preparing our podcast series. So if that feels fair to you, please visit patreon.com/Steve Prentice. Until next time, stay safe and thanks for listening.